All right, back in the basement again today to talk about this StrongArm Sport Razor Bar. I've done a first impressions video already, but I wanted to follow up on it because I've been getting a lot of questions about it. And I think it's because it's actually on sale in Canada for like 20% off. And a lot of our friends up north, unfortunately, for lack of better terms, tends to get hosed when it comes to getting good priced barbell. So this bar is very interesting. I'm going to talk about the features of it, what makes it unique, and then I'll kind of work in price because that's obviously the main deciding factor for a lot of us at the end of the day. So first of all, as the name implies, this is a sharp bar. And you would think, yeah, it's called the Razor Bar, it's going to be sharp. But most manufacturers with power bars will say it's aggressively knurled. Oftentimes not the case. In this case, really, really sharp knurling on it. But it comes with a little bit of a caveat. So if you go on their website and you read up on this bar, it says it's a sharp bar, which it is. It also says it's about 20 tops per inch, which means talking about the knurl pattern, if you were to put a measuring tape on here and you were to measure an inch worth of knurl, you would have basically 20 tops along that inch. That is not the case. It's actually a lower TPI, right around 16 I got. I'm sure I'll flash a screen for reference for what I did so you can pause it and count yourself if you want. But that, in my opinion, is actually a good thing if you want a very aggressive bar. So let me go on for a side tangent. I've talked about TPI or tips per inch, tops per inch, whatever you want to call it in the past. It's basically the equivalent of when you deal with sandpaper, a fine grit versus a grittier grit or chunkier grit, where you get those big old pieces in there to really kind of knock some stuff out. Same thing is true for barbells. The higher TPI you have, the smaller actual patterns, the more tops you can compact into a smaller area, which tends to leave bars very grippy. But because you're pushing things so close together, it's really hard to cut it deep and aggressive in some cases. So if you have a lower TPI or a lower tops per inch, you can tend to dig in deeper and get those more pronounced pieces of knurl, which can potentially lead to sharper feeling knurl. Now, again, it's going to depend on, is it a volcano? Is it a mountain? We have small canos, tall canos, all sorts of different things out there. I will say that this bar is one of the sharpest that I own. I think, in fact, the only bar sharper that I own is the Rogue Agro 3. It is sharper for a couple of reasons. Number one, it has a lower TPI than this. So where this is around a 16 or so TPI, the Agro 3 for me, I'm getting around 14 to 15. So they can make them a little bit bigger, which means they can cut them a little bit deeper. And when you look at the actual tooling on the Rogue bar, I'm going to have to set up comparison pictures on here because I'm just going based off of feel. But I feel like the Rogue is cut a little bit cleaner as well, which means, again, it's going to feel a little bit sharper. But that Agro 3 has your standard type collars on it, whereas, again, this is like a true IPF spec power bar with the thin competition collars, which brings the weights in, which makes this very stiff. And add that to the very aggressive knurling is going to definitely give you a little bit of a bite. And the Razor name is well-deserved. Speaking about the knurling, now that I'm already talking about it, some other things to call out. Of course, it's going to have your standard powerlifting knurl marks. The center knurl here is almost a full 6 inches. I'm making a face because I think it's that center knurl. Got a little bit ahead of myself. I get excited talking about barbells if you haven't noticed already. The knurl itself extends all the way to the collar. Typically, I don't like when that happens because there's more chance for the sleeves to kind of get a little bit grindy. Not the case here. You're not having a ton of spin on the sleeves as is, but again, for a power bar, that's not super important. Now, in addition to the knurling, what makes this bar desirable for a lot of people is the stainless steel aspect of it. So not only is the shaft stainless, but the sleeves are stainless as well. Why is that a big deal? Well, in most cases, when you get a stainless steel bar, you're just getting a stainless shaft, and the sleeves tend to be stuff like hard chrome or zinc or some other finish, Cerakote in some cases for some reason. But in this case, you're getting a stainless shaft and stainless sleeves, or at least that's what they advertise it as. Again, I'm going based off what they tell me, but the tops per inch thing already threw me for a little bit of a loop. The interesting thing I found was I actually broke out a magnet. And I don't typically like magnet tests for stainless steel because depending on the grade of stainless, some are magnetic, some aren't. In this case, the shaft is very magnetic, and the sleeves are slightly magnetic. There is a discernible difference between the magnetic properties of the shaft and the sleeve, which makes me think that if everything is stainless like they say, that these are different grades of stainless steel. And I think that's important when it comes to price because a big reason a lot of manufacturers don't actually like to offer stainless steel sleeves is because it adds quite a bit of cost to the barbell overall. So I think I heard a manufacturer say in some cases it adds like around $75 to the cost of a barbell. When you factor in the cost of stainless steel bars in general, adding another $75 so on top of that, that is pretty expensive when you're dealing with a $300 to $400 to $500 bar. You're talking a good chunk percentage of the overall price. So a lot of them like to avoid it for that reason. Add on top of that, that stainless is known as a softer metal. You can get a lot of damage, I suppose. Doesn't hold up as well, doesn't look as good over time. That's another reason they tend to avoid it. And to be honest, the reason people like stainless steel is because how little of upkeep you have to have. But for something like a sleeve, in my opinion, where you're not having a lot of touch points, I mean, you're holding the plates, putting the plates on, sliding the plates off, you're not going to get as much oxidation on here in your environment as you would on where you're actually gripping the bar, where you have sweat and moisture, and in the case of a razor bar, blood, or if you're dealing with incontinence, then you might get that on the bar too. If you don't know what that is, don't look it up. Do yourself a favor. But let's just say any other bodily fluids as well. You know, that's what's going to expedite the oxidation process, not the sleeves, which is a low touch point, which also is an inferior metal in some cases when it comes to hardness, and also adds to the cost of the bar. You don't usually get stainless steel sleeves is what I'm trying to say. In this case, they tell you do, so I'm assuming that you do. So again, something that's a little bit more unique. Speaking of unique, something that you don't see all the time on these type of bars either is the end caps themselves are all on sticker, which means there's no snap ring in it. So I'm assuming if I were to peel off the end cap, there'd probably be a place to put in a tool. I forget what it's called, but it looks like this. You put it in and twist the cap off, you unscrew it. I have a couple other bars like that, but they tend to be more Ollie bars or like my Usaka power bar. Most typical snap ring designs, you don't have that. The downside is the StrongArm logo is one of my least favorite, and I'm not picky on stuff. Like I have Hansu stuff, which people make fun of that logo, X-Master stuff, which people think is a porn company, which is very similar, by the way. If you Google X-Master, be careful, you've been warned. Not a big fan of the StrongArm logo, so the end caps here are pretty weak in my opinion, but what the bar offers more than makes up for it. And again, the grippiest, sharpest competition style bar that I own and that I've used, and I've competed quite a bit. Now, a downside to that, however, though, is you get to a point where there's diminishing returns for aggressiveness. So my Aggro 3 bar, which I said is actually sharper than this, I don't use it. It's more of a novelty thing, a fun thing to pull out when friends are over and say, hey, feel this. Yeah, it feels pretty good, doesn't it? Take that for what it's worth. Same thing with this bar. Like if I'm doing like heavy rep work with squatting or deadlifting or even benching to an extent, like this doesn't feel good in my hands. Over time, my hands get beat up, they get sore. There's no reason to. It doesn't add anything to it. That being said, it is still completely usable. Like I can deadlift with it. I can squat with it. In fact, the other day I squatted with a sleeveless shirt on, not for the gram, but just to show that, you know, you could get it on, because depending on where your shoulders sit and the bar sits, you're not going to get a ton of actual scraping or puncture or other mortality wounds on you. But it's just one of those things where there's no reason for it necessarily. I think the aggressiveness here is going to just be a novelty, like I said. And if you're pulling heavy singles or you're pulling sumo where you could potentially like scratch up your shins or tear a callus, like this thing is going to be super unforgiving. And again, I wouldn't use this necessarily as a daily driver. But that being said, it does offer some stuff that other bars don't. So if you're kind of a bar collector or you're in Canada and you can't get a stainless steel power bar, especially like a comp spec bar, like this could be a potential good option. But if you're like me in the United States and see this at a retail price of $479, it's not an easy buy, right? Like, yes, they have free shipping, which is great. Yes, they occasionally have sales. But again, I wouldn't want to train with this thing every single day. And even though I think StrongArm can have some really good products, I also know from previous experience that sometimes it's kind of a crapshoot of what you get, especially when they're dealing with different batches. Right now, this is on pre-order and it's supposed to be coming back in September. Like I would feel a little bit uneasy about pre-ordering it until it actually came in and I saw the quality of the batch that was currently in. And again, that would be under the assumption that I just want like a bar that's going to punish me. I don't want just like a $400 to $500 power bar, because to be honest, I'd probably go with a different brand just because of some of the features that they have and some of the quality control things that they have, or in some cases, some of the things that StrongArm does not. But it's still a very good bar. And again, if you're looking for fully stainless bar, if you're looking for most aggressive, I don't think you're gonna find a bar that's, you could find a bar that's more stainless, I guess, but you won't find a bar that's more aggressive. Anyways, let me know your thoughts about this particular bar in the comment section below. Big thank you to StrongArm Sport for sending this bar to me at no cost. I try to keep it honest with you guys. Hopefully you guys appreciate my insight. I try not to steer you in the wrong direction, but sometimes differences occur in opinions. So let me know yours down below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.